Michael Shepard is an educator, community advocate, and 3-term Bellingham Port Commissioner. He has taught at the Western Washington University, Northwest Indian College, and Whatcom Community College, working to support students and strengthen educational opportunities across the region. Elected county-wide, Michael has earned a reputation for pragmatic leadership and a collaborative approach to problem solving. As a Bellingham Port Commissioner, he's worked closely with community partners, local governments, tribal nations, and industry leaders to advance projects that strengthen our regional economy, protect Whatcom County's natural resources, expand public access, and create new opportunities for working families. And on to Mr. Collins. Eamonn Collins is a high school science teacher at the Lummi Nation School and serves as vice president of the Culshan Community Land Trust. Before returning to the classroom, he spent several years as a policy advisor for U.S. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut and the Democratic staff of the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Education and Labor. Eamonn was elected to the 2025 Whatcom County Charter Review Commission and is the most recent past chair of the Whatcom County Democratic Party. Eamonn lives in the Birchwood neighborhood with his wife, Kamal Shah, a pediatrician at the Lummi Tribal Health Center, and their 2 young children. So the format tonight, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the same question. We will alternate who goes first. There will be no rebuttals or back and forth. All the politicians complain about how 1 minute's not enough, so we gave them 2 minutes so they can talk all about how great they are. 2 minutes not enough. Well, we'll just change it right now, just 5 minutes. We have the handy dandy timer. Please observe the time strictly so that we can ask you all 12 questions. And without further ado, we will have Commissioner Shepard go first. If you need me to repeat the question after the first candidate speaks, just let me know. So, Commissioner Shepard, every legislator must make decisions quickly. Not all of those decisions will be the right one. So a good legislator can recognize and correct those decisions. Please give an example of when you have been wrong and how you were able to self-correct.
Okay. I'm kind of a pacer, you know. So I'm going to stand. Michael Shepard, thank you all for being here tonight. It's a good question. You know, about 3 years ago at the port, we had an opportunity to review a proposal to reactivate our shipping terminal with a new tenant. On paper, it looked really good, and our staff really liked the idea. It was going to bring recycling to our waterfront, increase union jobs at our shipping terminal, and create revenue for our community. It turned out to be something that we really didn't enjoy. It was a very noisy project. It created water pollution that the tenant was not able to control. And it did not make some of our neighbors very happy, having the noise and unsightliness. It was something that we recognized as an opportunity and a need to course correct. And I think it's really important to be able to take those opportunities, to see a challenge, to listen to our neighbors, to hear what is working for some and might not be working for others, and then be able to make a definitive action. And we were able to do that. Fortunately, we had a good lease and specific terms that if they were violated, we were able to terminate. And we were able to accomplish that. And so that's an example where us as an organization was able to, I think, really also have a lot of learning. Today, we evaluate all cargo into our shipping terminal through a rigorous mechanism where all of our divisions, especially our environmental division, has a say in what type of cargo comes in. Does it meet our community needs? Does it meet our environmental standards? And is it something that we're going to be able to really stand behind? So, thank you. Good job. 2 minutes.
Would you like a repeat of the question?
Sure.
Every legislator must make decisions quickly. Not all of those decisions will be the right one. So a good legislator can recognize and correct those decisions. Give an example of when you've been wrong and how you were able to self-correct.
So the first example that came to mind for me in the year, which was really more like 6 months, I served on the Whatcom County Charter Review Commission. I had been interested in that role once I realized that Whatcom County and our own county charter had the ability to change the way that we vote. I thought, oh, this is potentially an area to make progress on ranked choice voting, which I think is fundamental to reforming what's broken in our democracy. The way we vote and the role of money in politics are kind of the corrosive twins eating away at our institutions. My mistake, I think, was in not understanding the structural limitations of that body that was designed, I think, to be difficult to make reforms. There was a new requirement of a supermajority, and I think I underestimated the level of partisanship in a local body, and we were hopeful that we could actually get two of our Republican colleagues to agree to put a ranked choice voting amendment on the ballot. And if I had seen that kind of partisanship from the start, understood on the 6-month timeline that we were not going to get to the point where we had built relationships and actually be able to get it across the finish line, I think we wouldn't have spent as much time on that, or just kind of worked on promoting the ideal idea rather than trying to get across the finish line what we thought we actually could. But it's important in legislating, I think, to be able to take risks and fail and try again. When you are facing challenges as monumental as we are now, or as they did during the Great Depression, like in the New Deal, half of that stuff didn't work. And half of it was so good that it's still around.
Thank you. So we'll switch back. Eamonn, you're going first. Yep, get ready. While there's common agreement that Washington State faces a housing crisis, there are competing solutions proposed ranging from rent stabilization, increasing market rate supply, to subsidized housing. How would you weigh these sets of options, and what would you prioritize amongst them?
We need all of the above. And I think when we are forced to kind of pick sides in that debate, we all lose. I'm on the record publicly advocating for some of the removals of regulatory barriers locally that make it easier to build more types of housing in more places. That is an essential piece of the picture. Just doing that is not going to create the number of homes, and certainly not the number of affordable homes that we need in Whatcom County. Just removing those barriers for affordable homes, kind of like narrowly getting rid of some of the regulatory barriers, I don't think that would do it either. As a board member of a local nonprofit that actually moves dirt, is one of the groups that are building affordable homes. I don't think we have the capacity. I don't see where the nonprofits are actually able to step up and build that much. I think our local leaders have reached for those tools first, because they come without a cost. They're easy to do. But ultimately, we need an affordable housing boom. We need to build thousands of permanently affordable homes. We need to create real alternatives to the private equity for-profit system that we have, where we've allowed housing to be traded like a commodity and manipulated. And when bubbles eventually burst, it's regular people and residents that are left holding the bag. So that means making the money that we do have in the State Housing Trust Fund, where we get most of the subsidies we use. It means removing some of the use restrictions and onerous reporting requirements and places where we've just kind of copy and pasted federal housing and urban development regulations unnecessarily. And we also need to find new progressive revenue to significantly increase the Housing Trust Fund.
Thank you. Would you like the question again, Commissioner? Back up to the... Well, there's common agreement that we face a housing crisis. There are competing solutions proposed ranging from rent stabilization, increasing market supply, to subsidized housing. How would you weigh these options, and which one would you prioritize?
Yeah. Well, I think many of us recognize housing is not just a one solution answer. It's a continuum of options and opportunities that we need to invest in. I'm somebody who ascribes to that abundance model. We see those things that we want in abundance. Housing that's affordable is certainly one of them. And we want to remove those barriers that are blocking our ability to get there. You know, at our property, we recently built an ADU for my mother-in-law, and I was astounded how difficult it was just to build an ADU in our backyard. The permitting delays, the fees, the costs, it was really remarkable. I bought my first home through Colshan Community Land Trust, and I served on their board while I was a homeowner. And I was also shocked at how challenging it was for an organization that is doing exactly what our community wants to build those homes. The regulatory environment, the lack of kind of dedicated support personnel at the county and city level to shepherd projects through the regulatory process was a significant challenge. It created delays for an organization that is doing exactly what we want. And so we know there are those barriers. We recognize that some of them are policy, some of them are regulatory, some of them relate to how our finance systems work, and we need to see housing built in a variety of ways. People are just not able to afford many of the basics today, and it's because we're not building enough housing, we're not building enough healthcare, delivering enough healthcare for people, and we're not providing enough opportunities for people to really benefit and feel secure in our communities.
Commissioner Shepard, you're back in the hot seat. That's right.
Why sit down?
Great question. Thank you for staying on time, both of you gents. Appreciate it. Commissioner Shepard, what do you believe the day-to-day job of a state senator actually entails, and how are you preparing for that?
Okay. The Senate, the work of the Senate and all of our legislature is part-time. So it is only part of the year. During session, it is a immersive, nonstop experience. And your job is mostly to listen and represent your community and to bring back resources and deliver for that community. That's a huge portion of your job. You're also trying to develop statewide policy that reflects your community values. And that process is something that you do for the entirety of session. After session is over, you still have the job of listening to your community, representing your community, and representing it on a weekly basis. And that is how I've worked with our existing elected officials like Sharon Shoemake, who is somebody who I really look up to. And when she called and let me know she was retiring and asked me if I would step up to run to make sure we keep somebody who can continue the legacy of her work in office, that was something that was a motivating factor for me to think about different ways that I can continue to represent our community, to continue to make sure that our values are seen in Olympia and that we see those values reflected here. And so the work of us legislators is something of really vital importance for our community, and this 42nd district is a uniquely challenging swing district. I've lived here in Whatcom County since the mid-90s. Only 10 years ago, we had 3 Republicans representing the 42nd, and we have worked hard to see gains in representation with our representation in the 42nd district that I hope to keep continuing.
Thank you. Question repeated?
No, it's okay.
Good.
As I'm thinking about stepping into this role, I'm spending a lot of time meeting with local leaders and understanding the local impacts of some statewide and national dynamics. But I think key to this job is the relationships that you build with other legislators, the kind of interpersonal play of negotiating and passing legislation. Before I returned to the classroom, I spent several years as a congressional staff member, working primarily on education policy. I've written legislation, I've negotiated bipartisan legislation. I've I managed hearings and worked on getting bills kind of through the committee process. Ultimately, like one of the things that I say to my friends that I want people to understand in kind of the way that you think about government is that government can do what we want it to do. Like we're often told there are these barriers that are put up. We say, we can't do that for this particular reason. That's never been done before. If the people in the room decide that they can do it, then they can. We can have progressive revenue. We can make multimillionaires pay their fair share. We can massively scale up the amount of permanently affordable housing that we're building and create real competition for-profit landlords. And we can enact more rigorous rent control and create competition to that for-profit rental market. And ultimately, we need to have, I think, a little more moral courage and political imagination in what we're trying to accomplish. The 40 seconds too important to not run on our most compelling progressive platform.
Stay standing.
Every time. I'm going to forget every single time.
See if they remember. The Washington taxation system is incredibly regressive. We all know this, but disproportionately burdens lower and middle income residents. Would you support the millionaire's tax? And more broadly, what is your specific plan to address the regressive nature of Washington's tax structure?
Thank you. Yeah, we have one of the most regressive tax systems in the United States. Our federal tax code is already heavily tilted in favor of billionaires, and we compound that problem in Washington state. I definitely support the millionaire's tax. I wish that in passing it, it didn't roll back some of the estate taxes that were set to go into effect in 2027. The millionaire's tax doesn't go into effect until 2029. I support the capital gains tax. I'm on board for anything that's going to level the playing field. Right now, we balance our budgets on the backs of working people. Sales tax is a terrible policy mechanism. Property tax is a pretty bad policy mechanism for most things, and we lean very heavily on both of those. We need to get out of this trap, this kind of conceptual trap where we're told that fulfilling our obligations and meeting basic human needs can only come at the cost of increasing the tax burden on working people when you go to the grocery store every time you make any purchase, or by continuing to put the burden on your housing, your base of stability in your community. That's a false choice, and it's one that very much benefits the wealthiest and most powerful in a country and a state with increasing concentrations of wealth and power. We've been told for a long time that we can't have income tax in Washington state because one Supreme Court decision from 1933, a 5-4 decision that overturned the initiative of the voters, says that we can't. That's not what it says, and we can do it if our leaders decide we can.
Would you like a repeat?
No, I think I'm okay.
Everyone knows this one already.
Yeah. I appreciate that the state is working to address our regressive tax structure. It's something that I'm a professor at Western, and I teach my students, and we look at what it means to be a tax regressive country or a state. And we know that Washington ranks about 49 out of 50 as most tax regressive states in the whole country. That's not good. We need to be addressing that inequality of who is being hit the hardest by our tax system. And it's primarily people who are in the middle and lower income sectors of our community. Those who are at the highest levels are generally not paying the amount of taxes that is equivalent to those in the middle and lower incomes. And that's just a fundamental problem. That's an upside down tax system, and one that we need to continue to work to right size, and to flip over onto kind of its head. The challenge with the millionaire's tax for me is it puts additional revenue into the state from taxing high-income earners, but it doesn't have a lot of policy to reduce taxes for those in the middle or lower incomes. And so it, I think, misses the mark in its ability to provide tax relief for people who are experiencing a high tax burden. We also see that some of the proposals in there create things that we like free and reduced lunch. But in some of our districts, like Ferndale, a district that is struggling with finances, they already have free and reduced lunch. Cities like Bellevue and school districts like Bellevue are going to get free and reduced lunch, but they don't need it. And so there are some challenges with that bill and how it is going to be applied that don't exactly meet the mark for the tax relief I'm looking for.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm still up.
Sorry, I'm having fun. Commissioner Shepard, the budget shortfall entering the next session is estimated at $900 million. Are there any state programs you believe are ineffective and would consider cutting? And how would you approach making those hard decisions?
Yeah, the state budget is a challenge. One of the things we are not funding is education. I'm an educator. We've seen at the higher education level several years in a row of budget cuts, which are continuing to make it harder for us to do our job of educating students. What's more troubling for me, and that's been hard, but what I see at the K-12 level, just about 10, 15 years ago, the state was spending about 53% of its budget on K-12 education. Today, it's less than 43%. And we are seeing it every day in the shortfalls for what programs are being offered. Do we have librarians? Do we have counselors? Do we have early childhood education? Do we have to close schools in our community? These are real impacts that are impacting our school district and our teachers, principals, like my wife is a school principal here in the Bellingham School District, and students. And so there are clearly things that we are not funding well at the state level. And we're going to have to be really dedicated to increasing those funding sources. One thing I really like about work we do at the port is almost all of our budget is created through revenue positive initiatives. We take very little tax money from the average citizen because we run a shipping terminal and harbors and marinas and airport and real estate portfolios that all bring in resources to fund the services we provide for the community. I'm going to continue looking for revenue positive solutions at the state level that are able to bring in more revenue, hopefully put people to work, and continue to meet some of our budget challenges that we have.
Would you like the question repeated?
Okay. We can't raise enough revenue to fund every great idea, but we also can't throw up our hands every time we encounter some policy challenge and just say, there's no way that we can do that. We don't have the tools to do that. In K-12 education funding, the levy equalization that was supposed to ensure that a child's education was not determined by their zip code and the wealth of their neighborhood. That really hasn't worked out, and we're basically back in the same position that we were a couple decades ago. From being in the classroom every day, I teach at a tribal school. Our funding is a little bit different, but we still get state education funding. It is only increasing the burden on teachers, the things that we're supposed to do, the challenges that our students are coming in with, and we're still supposed to provide the same level of rigorous education. We're social workers and we're counselors, and they're coming in hungry or without a secure place to sleep, or with inadequate health care, or they have a family member who died from opioid overdose. And all these things show up in the classroom. So I struggle to think of places where we really need fewer resources. And I think we should be pursuing a wealth tax in Washington State. I think the idea that all the millionaires are just going to leave is a bizarre Ayn Rand fantasy. They're not going to boycott us. Successful people, wealthy people want to live in Washington because it's a great place to live. And if there are great schools here and a safe and stable community, they want to be here. There are specific revenue mechanisms like real estate transfer tax on the sale of homes over $3 million that would bring in hundreds of millions of dollars for the Housing Trust Fund.
Time's up. First one need to figure that out gets my vote. That's it. Yeah, just no, we know you.
I like your smug glance every time.
I do what I can. I got big shoes to fill over there. Washington State currently funds K through 12 education as its paramount duty, but many advocates argue the system should be expanded to fully fund education from early childhood pre-K through community college or K-23, despite the current budget crunch. What are your thoughts on fully funding that entire continuum, and what would it take to get there?
I don't know if Michael or I would really have much to say about education. As I started to say in my last answer, it's still flashing, Andrew. I don't think you. Thank you. Or I'm just already out of time. We have failed to meet our fundamental obligation. I think there's a lot of folks in Bellingham right now that are upset at the prospect of closing elementary schools. Like the mere possibility of this is upsetting when you've built this community around your neighborhood school, and it's such a source of stability and community. We absolutely should not be relying on property taxes for most things, but definitely not for education. It reinforces inequities between districts, and it's among one of many things where we should be looking more to progressive revenue sources, and we should not be afraid to pursue those as long as we are making it very clear when we raise revenue from multimillionaires here that it's abundantly clear that money is going back into working people's pockets through reduced or eliminated sales taxes, through reduced property tax burden. But some of these things also, I think we do ourselves a great disservice when we struggle to look past the initial cost of a program that has an incredible return on investment. I mean, that is true of higher education and 2 years of free community college or a public university is a great idea. There is no policy I have ever looked at with a higher return on investment than universal early childhood education. Just astounding value there, not only in educational outcomes and like economic output, but reduced incarceration, lower recidivism, lower homelessness, better health outcomes. It's a phenomenal investment, and legislators are often stuck in this kind of looking past the end of their term.
Repeated?
Yeah.
Yep. We currently fund K through 12 education. There are a lot of advocates arguing the system should fully fund pre-K through community college, despite the current budget crunch. What are your thoughts on fully funding that entire continuum, and what would it take to get there?
Okay, yeah, my simple answer is we're not meeting our constitutional obligation. We have a constitutional obligation to fund education, and we are just not doing that. If you go to our schools, you see schools that are running on a shoestring. Teachers who are doing heroic work, thank you to all you educators, but we are asking our teachers to do more than ever for students who are coming in with more complex needs than ever. And it is just unfair. We have to be bringing more resources to our educational system. We make smart investments when we invest in wraparound educational services that include librarians who provide literacy education, counselors who meet the mental health and social emotional needs of our communities, enrichment programs, early childhood education. These are fundamental things that we are just not doing. So how do we pay for it? That's the trick. The state budget is not in a great situation. So I think there's some things we have to start getting creative of. One, we're looking at a huge amount of wealth transfer around AI. If we were looking to things to tax, I think we have to be taxing things that we want to control and regulate and have vast amounts of profit that are being generated. AI is one of those pieces that we should be regulating and taxing in greater capacity. We should also be thinking creatively about things like a 4-day work week. We saw it in San Juan County to meet a need of budget challenges with quality of life. During the pandemic, many of our schools were operating on a 4-day work week, and for parents, it was a good thing. For productivity, it was a good thing. And I think we're at a point where it's hard to find more money in the system, and we have to be thinking about creative solutions that allow us to continue meeting our objectives with our budget challenges.
This is the one's for Commissioner Shepard.
Standing.
No smug glance, Eamonn. You're welcome. Washington State's correctional system has faced persistent overcrowding and deteriorating safety conditions.
What system?
The correctional system.
Oh, the correctional
yes. With repeated legislative efforts falling short of lasting solutions, proposed approaches have ranged from resentencing lower level offenders to reclassifying facility housing arrangements, yet the reform has remained elusive. What concrete steps would you take to reduce incarceration in our state?
You know, I think this community really values making sure that we are redirecting anytime we can people out to other forms of treatment and diversion services that don't require incarceration. That's something that we value. That's something we want to see in that jail facility that is so controversial here in our community. We value those type of efforts. We know that it makes long-term financial sense and is better for people. For the past 10 years, I teach a class twice a year to students who are all incarcerated in the California prison system. My students are phenomenal. They take a class on cultural anthropology from me. They learn about cultural diversity, they think about their experiences, and so many of them have life stories that are not so different from mine. They may have just been at the wrong place in the wrong time. They might have been the wrong color at the wrong location. And they have entered into incarceration. We know that when we invest in education in our incarceration system, it reduces the chance that they are going to be back. We know it creates more opportunity so that these individuals have pathways outside. And so we need to be both diverting people whenever possible from reaching our incarceration systems and also to be providing services. Is this thing going? Oh, here I am just talking. I could talk to you about my classes all day.
We'll give you one more.
Andrew's going to let me.
One more minute.
Here, one more minute. And so, you know, I think we have some models here in our community that we use for incarceration, diversion services, so that people are using creative methods within our court system to receive kind of whether they need treatment, whether they need counseling, or whether they need other wraparound support services that don't require that expensive thing of incarceration. It is the most costly way that we care for individuals. Education is a far better investment every single time. If we invest in education from early on, and I'm really over my time here.
30 seconds.
I think, but
20 seconds.
If we invest in early education, we have, it's going to continue to provide returns, and it's something we can do within the prison system as well to create those pathways outside.
Your time is up. Thank you. Poor timing by the moderator, you guys. It's a real shame. Would you like the question repeated? Yep. And those are designed, you can keep those on the whole time. You don't need to mute them. Mark and Albert are aces. Configured it. No toggling. It's because we care about you guys. Washington State's correctional system has faced persistent overcrowding and deteriorating safety conditions, with repeated legislative efforts falling short. Proposed approaches have ranged from resentencing lower-level offenders all the way to reclassifying facility housing arrangements. What concrete steps would you take to reduce incarceration in our state?
I think prevention and diversion programs are investments. Incarceration is just a cost. It's a necessary cost in some cases. I mean, I don't want violent criminals walking around either. I don't want people who could harm us to be out. But in most cases, you don't send somebody into prison or into jail and expect them to come out better. They're going to be worse. Their mental health will be worse. Their job prospects will be much worse. They will have a harder time getting housing. These are necessary costs that we need to pay, but the number of beds in a jail, I don't think that should be really our starting point normally. There was a survey, I remember a couple of years ago, of inmates in the Whatcom County Jail that asked them what would have helped keep you out of jail. And the majority said a stable place to live. Housing is a great investment that is a form of prevention and diversion. It is much cheaper to build affordable housing than it is to build prisons. Early childhood education that we already talked about. Like these things are investments, and gotta keep our eyes on the long term.
You had 18 seconds left. You're not going to use it? That's fine. Okay. I'm just going to let it run all the way down. Everyone having a good time? Are they doing okay? You're good. Yeah. That's right. We are about 60% of the way through the program. Eamonn, next one's for you. Cost of healthcare has increased dramatically in recent years, and Whatcom County is experiencing major issues with the Peace Health monopoly. What concrete actions would you take to expand healthcare, and would you support universal healthcare in Washington State?
Yeah, I think we need to be thinking about bold transformations in a lot of areas of policy, including healthcare, because our federal government is at best an unreliable partner going forward. I would not count on having federal Medicaid dollars continue to flow in. The math tells us that providing public health insurance to everybody, even at the state level, is a net savings. That doesn't mean it's not a major legislative fight, but we shouldn't pretend that the only tools we have are the systems that already exist. I don't feel like I have access to the best quality care in Whatcom County. I'm concerned about the fact that we only have this one hospital our hospital system that never had vaccines available for my kids in the whole course of the pandemic. We have the Lummi Nation to thank for all of our COVID vaccines. I think that the letter of determination process, this is a policy tool that makes these kind of healthcare monopolies possible, and the state needs to be taking a lot more actions in that regard. But I think we should be prepared for it. The reason that I think on every issue area we're going to keep coming back to the need to change the way that we raise revenue is because we're going to have to take care of a lot more on our own. We should be looking for how we can pay to ensure that everyone in Washington has health care. A private for-profit insurance company should never be standing in between you and the care that you need. People who are battling cancer in the last months of their life should not be spending time arguing on the phone to get the care that their doctors say they deserve.
I can't believe I'm having to tell two candidates this. Use all your time, because I can't figure out how to run this down. Right? Talk more. That's Come on. Would you like to
Nobody ever said that.
it's in the record right now. Would you like the question repeated?
No, I got it. Okay, so healthcare is one of those key issues I'm hearing about when I'm out doorbelling with people. People want to talk about affordability, and healthcare is one of those costs that has just skyrocketed for people. We are all going to be old and gray and maybe dead if we wait for the federal government to do this for us. They should. That's where healthcare should come from, on a federal level. It makes the most sense. They are not going to. We have to do that here locally. This is what we need to do to create that abundance that we are looking for in terms of health. It's how we take care of each other. What we've done at the Port of Bellingham, for me, sets a model. 15 years ago, the Port moved to a self-insurance model. We cut out the private healthcare insurer in between our government and our workers, our employees, including commissioners like me. We've saved the taxpayers over $7 million of Whatcom County in that time. And I have the best health insurance I've ever had in my life. It's the kind of health insurance that everybody should have. It pays for preventative medicine. It pays for the care when you need it. You don't have to weigh, can I afford to have something treated, or do I have to figure out how I'm going to scramble to make rent? That's the health insurance that we should be providing. Washington has a plan. We have good partners like Whole Washington that have a clear plan for incremental steps towards achieving universal health care in Washington state. They involve both first starting with policy initiatives at Medicare and Medicaid, where we remove the insurance middlemen profiting off of health care and provide a direct fee for service from the government to patients. We then expand that statewide. I'm not going to tell you it's easy. But I am going to tell you it's going to save money because there is profit where it shouldn't be, and that's around our health.
Stay right there. just to shave a second off of it. Commissioner Shepard, building data centers has been an important source of rural jobs and economic development in Washington state, and our strict clean energy standard means the same facility operating here is much better for the climate. The rapid advancement, however, of AI-driven data centers could mean consequences for electricity prices, water usage, and other environmental impacts. How would you balance these competing forces?
Yeah, we already don't have enough clean energy on our grid. It's one of those other things we want in abundance, and we don't have. We are not investing. We are just not building enough clean energy in this state. We know we want it. We know there are good jobs associated with it. We know we want the clean energy, but it's just not being built. Some of that is the regulatory pathway it needs to get through. At the Port, we switched to PSE's Green Direct program a couple years ago. We buy almost 100% of our electricity from solar and wind generated sources. There wasn't enough of energy available in their Green Direct program for us to fully subscribe for all of our energy needs. There just wasn't enough available. So there's not enough of that clean energy around for existing municipal partners who want to do our part with getting on a pathway to net zero. And so we need to remove those bottlenecks that are going to put our union labor to work to build those clean energy facilities, to provide that clean energy for the communities that want it. That is something we value here. These are jobs that fit our community values and an outcome that's going to fit our values too. I think we need to be taking a very close look at what AI is doing for employment. My 13-year-old daughter, driving to gymnastics a couple months ago, she said, "Dad, are there going to be any jobs for me when I get older? Because AI is going to take them all." I was like, wow, this is a gymnastics drive to practice here, and you just hit me with a hard question. But this is on the mind of my daughter, it's on the mind of my students at Western, and it's on the mind of our union represented employees throughout our community. We need to make sure that as we see this transition with more AI technology, that we are looking for predictable, responsible policy in place so that we are not at a loss for our employment and we're not at a loss for our kids' future.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good?
Yeah.
Solid memory, yes.
Building data centers creates jobs in the short term. It doesn't create jobs in the long term. energy demands of these data centers are very real, and we've seen when businesses come in making big promises about their long-term plans, and then maybe a bubble bursts, often then taxpayers, the public is left holding the bag. They're stuck footing this bill. I know there was legislation in this last session, I don't think it passed, to try to close some of those loopholes and ensure that ratepayers would never be on the hook for the costs of increasing our electricity capacity to power the AI revolution that we're going through. I want to, okay, all right, I got a minute left. So two other thoughts. One on energy in general. I think our public utility district, like I'm thrilled that they're in the early stages of pursuing enhanced geothermal electricity generation out near Mount Baker. We need our public utility districts to step up the amount of electricity they're generating and create real alternatives and competition for monopolies like PSE that with rate increases they just announced, I think there were over 30% increase in just the last few years. And we need to be looking very hard at state-level regulation of AI. This is another area where we should be looking to the federal government, and they're completely asleep at the wheel. There's no regulation when they're bought and paid for by these companies. 40% of the S&P 500 is tied up in artificial intelligence, and this sector's coming for our kids. Very much needs regulation.
A Senate bill supporting the right of immigrant farm workers to unionize failed in the Senate in this past session. Would you support such a bill, and under what circumstances would you do so?
I would support that bill under any circumstances. That was one of a couple of bills that would have protected immigrants that sadly did not make it out of this session. Another one that comes to mind, I know that there's a kind of loophole in the Keep Washington Working Act, this otherwise great legislation that we have, that kind of builds a firewall between our state agencies and the federal government in terms of sharing data about immigrants. But right now, ICE and Customs and Border Protection can be notified when someone's has finished serving their time, when they're released. So ending your incarceration can now be a direct pathway to deportation, and we're not talking about just violent criminals either. We need to be standing up as many legal firewalls as we can between our state and the federal government. We're seeing this diminishment of capacity as our federal institutions are broken on purpose, things that we rely on to protect us from exploitative financial practices or scams, like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is gone. The Office of Civil Rights in the Department of Education that I used to work with closely is gone. We need to be backfilling these gaps that appear, but we also need to be creating as much friction as possible with the federal government in these areas of overreach and persecution of our friends and neighbors.
Thank you.
Why don't you read the question again for me?
Senate bill supporting the right of immigrant farm workers to unionize failed in the most recent Senate session. Would you support such a bill, and under what circumstances?
Yeah, it's a good question. When I think about issues around immigration, I always just fall back onto my own family's story. My mother's from the island of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is not only the first site of colonization in the Americas, but way back in 1492. It was when colonization started on the island. But the impact of the policies that we're experiencing now on Latino communities, which my family is a part of, are just exceptionally severe. They are unjust, they are not right, and they're creating harm at the hands of the federal government. We need to be stepping up as a state to create protections for members of our community to keep people safe. I'm glad the state took action last year on policy that reduces the ability for ICE to use masking in raids, be at certain child care facilities. That needs to be expanded. When at Western, we have to lock our doors because we don't know who is on the other side of our classroom door for the safety of our students. That's not something we want to be experiencing. For our farming community, the ability to have union labor is part of larger processes of unionization that we're seeing in more sectors of our economy than we've ever seen before. That's important, it's positive, and something we should support. And I think it's a pathway to be able to create more opportunities for us to have farm workers in our communities. I was out talking with Whatcom Family Farms a couple weeks ago, based in Linden. They support our agricultural community. One of the biggest challenges for our farming community right now is increased costs of fuel, thank you, President Trump, and challenges with finding labor. Those are real challenges that are impacting our community and our ability to keep farms working. And if we can unionize those workers, I think we might have a better chance at attracting and retaining a workforce here.
He got it.
Okay, I'm going to stand. I'm going to stay put.
Last question. Thanks all for sticking with us. Oh, yeah. No, I fought hard to get this question
this flew by.
into this program, okay? As energy demand grows, Puget Sound Energy is sending millions of dollars to investors and profits while consumers face incredibly high rate increases. What would you do to decrease the cost of electricity for the lower middle classes, and would you support making PSE a publicly owned co-op?
Okay, so yes, I definitely support ways to create better affordability around utilities. Utility increases are just crazy right now. I think we need to be considering policies that put a freeze on utility increases for residents until we are able to provide more reliable and more secure sources of energy in our communities. One of the things that I would like to see greater investment is use of Climate Commitment Act dollars to fund opportunities for individual homeowners, individual residents in buildings to benefit from alternative energy production. I was able to put those solar panels on my house. Great. That ability should be created more broadly to more members of Washington State. We severely need the energy, and we should be tapping into those rooftops whenever we have them. A couple things we've done at the port. We've supported rooftop solar installation. The port has the largest municipal solar installations in all of Whatcom County. They're on our airport, they're on our shipping terminal, and we just did a community solar for the first time on our Fisherman's Pavilion. All the panels are up, and it was one of those opportunities for community members to buy shares in that community solar initiative. We've also put in a district energy system at the waterfront. We're tapping PSE's power plant and pulling the waste heat off of that power plant and piping it to every new building in the waterfront district, including Mercy housing, low-income housing with family Whatcom YMCA childcare, the new buildings from Harcourt, the new hotel and conference center, all new construction in the waterfront district must connect to that district energy system for heating, cooling, and domestic hot water. There is so much capacity in that district energy system, we could power Western Washington University. We could power more parts of downtown Bellingham. We were able to go on a delegation to Copenhagen a couple years back with the ports. And Copenhagen has 99% of their city connected to district energy. It's efficient, it's effective, it's cost savings, and we've got resources here to achieve it.
Thank you. I gave Shepard a little bit of extra time. This is a very important question. You'll have 3 minutes to answer this question. That's right.
All right. Electricity should be a public utility. So should internet service, by the way. And anything that we're relying on that is fundamental to being able to live and operate in 2026, these should not be exposed to the whims of corporations pursuing shareholder value over ratepayer value and consumer value. I already said, I think the state needs to be playing a more active role, and our public utility districts are a big part of this in creating new renewable energy sources. I think our climate future is, we're seeing rapidly rising demand for electricity. We are quickly eating up the new added capacity from renewables. But I think our climate future is one of rolling blackouts too. I think our grid is something that we really haven't invested in on a large scale for over a century, and it makes us really vulnerable. And I think that's not something we think about, being not always reliable, but it's pretty fundamental to our daily lives, to our schools, to our hospitals. And so I think we have to take more seriously, again, because the federal government is not, the need to bolster our grid, to kind of decentralize it, and to be bringing in new sources of renewable energy, so that this is something that is affordable and reliable for all of our neighbors.
That's it, and that's all, folks. Let's give the candidates a big hand.